This is the one we've all been waiting for. We, the undersigned, duly elected and serving electors for President and Vice President, hereby certify that we have this day met in the executive offices of the Capitol at Tallahassee, Florida, and cast our votes for President of the United States and our votes for Vice President of the United States, and that the results are as follows. Those receiving votes for President of the United States, and the number of such votes were George W. Bush, 25. Those receiving votes for Vice President of the United States, and the number of such votes were Dick Cheney, and the number is 25. Done at Tallahassee, the Capitol, this 18th day of December 2000. Signed by the pertinent electors and duly attested. Mr. President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of Florida seems to be regular and informed and authentic, and appears therefore and therefrom that George W. Bush of the state of Texas received 25 votes for president, and Dick Cheney of the state of Wyoming received 25 votes for vice president.
Is there objection?
Mr. President, I object to the certificate from Florida.
The gentleman from Florida, Mr. Hastings, will present his objection. Is the gentleman's objection in writing and signed by a member of the House of Representatives and by a senator?
Mr. President, and I take great pride in calling you that. I must object because of the overwhelming evidence of official misconduct, deliberate fraud, and an attempt to suppress
The chair must
voter
remind
turnout.
members that under Section 18 of Title III, United States Code, no debate is allowed in the joint session.
Thank you, Mr. President. To answer your question, Mr. President, the objection is in writing, signed by a number of members of the House of Representatives, but not by a member of the Senate. Thank you, Mr. President.
The chair thanks the gentleman from Florida for his courtesy. Since the present objection lacks the signature of a senator, accordingly the objection may not be received.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Are there other objections?
Mr. President.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Florida, Mrs. Meek, arise?
Mr. President, I have an objection.
Is the objection in writing and signed by a member of the House and by a senator?
Mr. President, it is in writing and signed by myself and several of my constituents from Florida. A senator is needed but missing. On
the basis previously stated, the objection may not be received. The chair thanks the gentlewoman from Florida for her courtesy. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Florida, Ms. Brown, arise?
Mr. President, I stand for the purpose of objecting to the counting of the vote from the state of Florida as read.
Is the point of order in writing and signed by a member of the House of Representatives and a senator?
Mr. President, it is in writing and signed by several House colleagues on behalf and myself of the 27,000 voters of Duval County, in which 16,000 of them are African Americans that was disenfranchised in this last election.
The gentlewoman will suspend. The question, the part of the question that I'll put again is the objection signed by a member of the Senate?
Not signed by a member of the Senate. The Senate is missing.
The chair thanks the gentlewoman. The point of order on the basis previously stated may not be received. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Johnson, rise?
Mr. President, I rise on behalf of the Congressional Black Caucus to object to the 25 electoral votes from Florida.
Does the gentlewoman state a point of order, and is it in writing and signed by a member of the House of Representatives and a senator?
It is in writing by a number of members of Congress, and because we receive hundreds of thousands of telegrams and emails and telephone calls, but we do not have a senator.
Is the point of order signed by a senator?
It is not signed by a senator, Mr. President. Senator, Mr. President.
The chair thanks the gentlewoman from Texas. On the previous basis stated, the point of order may not be received.
Thank you, Mr. President.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Cummings, arise?
I have an objection.
Gentleman will state his objection.
Mr. President,
Is the objection in writing and signed by a member of the House and a senator?
Mr. President, it is in writing and signed by myself on behalf of the many disenfranchised people in the state of Florida, and it is signed along with many of my other colleagues from the House.
Is it signed by a senator?
No, it is not.
Well, the chair thanks the gentleman from Maryland on the basis previously stated. The point of order may not be received.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Jackson Lee, arise?
Mr. President, I have an objection.
Is the objection in writing and signed by a member of the House of Representatives and a senator?
Mr. President, thank you for your inquiry. It is in writing. It is signed by myself on behalf of my diverse constituents and the millions of Americans who have been disenfranchised by Florida's inaccurate vote count, along with my House colleagues, Mr. President.
Is the objection signed by a senator?
Mr. President, I do not have a senator who has signed this objection.
The chair thanks the gentlewoman from Texas. On the basis previously stated, the point of order may not be received.
Thank you, Mr. President.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Waters, arise?
Mr. Vice President, I rise to object to the fraudulent 25 Florida electoral votes.
Is the objection in writing and signed by a member of the House and a senator?
The objection is in writing, and I don't care that it is not signed by a member of the Senate.
The chair will advise that the rules do care, and the signature of the senator. The signature of a senator is required. The chair will again put that part of the question. Is the objection signed by a senator?
Mr. Vice President, there are gross violations of the Voting Rights Act from Florida, and I object, and it is not signed by a senator.
The chair thanks the gentlewoman from California. On the basis previously stated, the point of order may not be received. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Lee, arise?
Thank you, Mr. President. I have an objection.
Is the objection in writing and signed by a member of the House of Representatives and a senator?
Mr. President, it is in writing and signed by myself on behalf of many of the diverse constituents in our country, especially those in the 9th Congressional District, and all American voters who recognize that the Supreme Court, not the people of the United States, decided this election.
Is the objection signed by a senator?
Unfortunately, Mr. President, it is not signed by one single senator.
On the basis previously stated, the point of order may not be received. The chair thanks the gentlewoman from California. Are there? For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Georgia, Ms. McKinney, arise?
Mr. President, I have an objection at the desk to Florida's 25 electoral votes.
Is the objection in writing and signed by a member of the House of Representatives and a senator?
Mr. President, it is in writing, and it is signed by my Congressional Black Caucus colleagues, my House colleagues, and myself, but it is not signed by one single senator.
The chair thanks the gentlewoman from Florida. On the basis previously stated, the point of order may not be received. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Hawaii, Mrs. Mink, arise?
Mr. President, I want to voice my objection.
Is the objection in writing and signed by a member of the House of Representatives and a senator?
Mr. President, it is in writing, and I have signed it on behalf of not only myself and other colleagues of the House, but by my constituents. Unfortunately, I have no authority over the United States Senate, and no senator has signed.
The chair thanks the gentlewoman from Hawaii. On the basis previously stated, the point of order may not be received. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from North Carolina, Mrs. Clayton, arise?
Mr. President, I rise in objection to the Florida electoral votes, and I rise to object to the process that indeed that the voters do count. The essence of democracy demand that we speak.
Is the objection in writing, and is it signed by a member of the House of Representatives and a senator?
Mr. President, it is in writing, and it is signed by more than 10 of my members in the House.
Is the objection signed by a senator?
Unfortunately, it is not.
On the basis previously stated, the point of order may not be received.
Thank you, Mr. President.
The chair thanks the gentlewoman from North Carolina. Are there any other objections? Hearing none, the chair hands. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Georgia arise?
Mr. President, I object to Florida's electors, and in view of the fact that debate is not permitted in joint session and pursuant to Title III, I move that the House withdraw from the joint session in order to allow consideration of the facts surrounding the slate of electors from Florida.
The chair will remind the members of the joint session that even though a member's motion may affect only one House, the statutory principle of bicameral signatures must nevertheless be applied.
Mr. President,
reading sections, the gentlewoman will suspend. Reading sections 15 through 18 of Title III United States Code as a coherent whole, the chair holds that no procedural question is to be recognized by the presiding officer in the joint session unless presented in writing and signed by both a representative and a senator. Is the gentlewoman's motion in writing and signed by a member and a senator?
Mr. President, the motion is in writing. It is at the desk. And because it involves the prerogatives of the House, therefore, a Senate assent is not required.
The chair will advise the gentlewoman respectfully that reading sections 15 through 18 of Title III U.S. Code as a whole, the chair holds that no procedural question, even if involving only one House of Congress, is to be recognized by the presiding officer in the joint session unless presented in writing and signed by both a representative and a senator. Because the gentlewoman's motion is not signed by a senator, on the basis previously stated, the motion may not be received. And the chair thanks the gentlewoman from Georgia. For what purpose does the gentleman from California arise?
I have an objection to the electoral votes from Florida.
Is the objection in writing? Is it signed by a member of the House of Representatives and a senator?
No, it is not in writing, but I rise in solidarity with my colleagues who have previously expressed their objection.
The objection will not be allowed on.
I thank the President.
On the previous basis. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Waters, arise?
I have a motion of objection.
Is the motion in writing, and is it signed by a member of the House of Representatives and a member of the Senate?
The motion is in writing, Mr. President, and I rise to offer a motion to withdraw from the joint session. There's no reference to the section that you have referenced to quorum or withdrawal.
The chair will respectfully advise the gentlewoman from California that sections 15 through 18 of Title III, as previously stated, holds in the opinion of the chair and the parliamentarians that no procedural question is to be recognized by the presiding officer in the joint session, even if it applies to only one House, unless presented in writing and signed by both a representative and a senator. Since the chair has advised that the gentlewoman's motion is not signed by a senator, on the basis previously stated, the motion may not be received.
Let the record show that is an opinion. It is not written in that section in reference to quorum or withdrawal.
The chair thanks the gentlewoman from California. Are there any further objections to the certificate just counted?
Mr. President.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Texas rise?
Mr. President, I rise to make a point of order.
Is the point of order in writing, and is it signed by a member of the House of Representatives and a senator?
Mr. President, being that this is a solemn day and a day that we are affirming the voices of the American people,
the gentlewoman will.
We wish to delay this until a quorum has been maintained.
The gentlewoman will be advised, as all members of the joint session will be advised, that a motion for the presence of a quorum is not in order unless it is signed by a member of the House of Representatives and a senator.
It has been signed by
since
me.
the chair is advised that the gentlewoman's motion is not signed by a senator, it is not received.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is signed by me, but I do not have a senator. Thank you.
The chair thanks the gentlewoman from Texas. For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Jackson, arise?
Mr. President, I have an objection.
Is the gentleman's objection in writing and signed by a member of the House of Representatives and a senator?
Yes, sir, I have signed it.
Is the objection signed by a senator?
Well, Mr. President, I am objecting to the idea that votes in Florida were not counted, and it's a sad day in America, Mr. President, when we can't find a senator to sign these objections.
Gentleman will suspend.
Won't sign an objection, Mr. President.
The gentleman will suspend. The chair thanks the gentleman from Illinois, but hey, on the basis previously stated, the objection is not in order. For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Hastings, arise?
Would the President advise whether or not there is an opportunity to appeal the ruling of the chair?
The chair, This is going to sound familiar to you, to all of us. The chair finds that Section 17 of Title III, United States Code, prescribes a single procedure for resolution of either an objection to a certificate or other questions arising in the matter. The chair rules that the appeal is subject to the requirement that it be in writing and signed by both a member of the House of Representatives and a senator. Since the chair presumes that it is not signed by a senator, it is not received on the basis previously stated.
We did all we could.
The chair thanks the gentleman from Florida. The chair thanks. Are there further objections? For what purpose does the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Waters, rise?
I rise to ask unanimous consent that the debate on this issue go forward.
Notwithstanding the fact that objection was heard, the chair is advised that that motion cannot even be entertained. For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Jackson, rise?
Is it, Mr. President, is it possible to ask at this hour for a Democratic senator to sign one of these Democratic objections by unanimous consent? Is that within the House rules?
The chair will advise the gentleman from Illinois that any member of either chamber may do as he or she wishes so long as it is within the rules of the joint session and the rules of each chamber. So
Mr. President,
do as you will as long as it doesn't violate the rules. But the chair will not entertain debate because that is a violation of the rules of the joint session. If there is no further objection, the chair hands to the tellers a certificate of the electors for President and Vice President of the state of Georgia. And they will read the certificate and will count and make a list of the votes cast by that state.
Thank you. Certificate of ascertainment. On November 7, 2000, the following people were appointed electors of President and Vice President of the United States, each receiving 1,419,720 votes. Certificate of vote of the 2000 electors from Georgia, we the undersigned, being duly elected and qualified electors of President and Vice President of the United States of America in the state of Georgia. And hereinafter referred, in this certificate of the 2000 electors from the state of Georgia, do hereby certify the following. that the undersigned 2,000 electors from the state of Georgia convened and organized at the state capitol in the city of Atlanta, county of Fulton, Georgia, at 12 o'clock noon on the 18th day of December to perform the duties enjoined upon them. That Frederick E. Cooper presided and that Eric J. Tannenblatt served as secretary for the meeting. That the undersigned 2,000 electors from the state of Georgia each cast each of their respective ballots for President of the United States as follows. Mr. President, signed by the pertinent electors and duly attested, Mr. President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of Georgia seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that George W. Bush of the state of Texas received 13 votes for President. Dick Cheney of the state of Wyoming received 13 votes for Vice President.
Is there objection? Hearing none, the chair hands to the tellers the certificate of the electors for President and Vice President of the state of Hawaii, and they will read the certificate and will count and make a list of the votes cast by that state.
The Electoral College vote count at Saturday's joint congressional meeting continued for another hour as each state submitted its certified results. At the conclusion of that process, as required by the U.S. Constitution, Vice President Gore, who also serves as the President of the Senate, announced the results.
Gentlewomen of the Congress, the certificates of all the states have now been opened and read, and the tellers will make the final ascertainment of the results and deliver the same to the President of the Senate.
Mr. Vice President, the undersigned Christopher J. Dodd and Mitch McConnell, tellers on the part of the United States Senate, William M. Thomas and Shaka Fatah, tellers on the part of the House of Representatives, report the following as the result of the ascertainment and counting of the electoral vote for President and Vice President of the United States for the term beginning on the 20th day of January, 2001.
The state of the vote for President of the United States as delivered to the President of the Senate is as follows. The whole number of the electors appointed to vote for President of the United States is 538, of which a majority is 270. George W. Bush of the state of Texas has received for President of the United States 271 votes. Al Gore of the state of Tennessee has received 266 votes. The state of the vote for Vice President of the United States, as delivered to the President of the Senate, is as follows. The whole number of the electors appointed to vote for Vice President of the United States is 538, of which a majority is 270. Dick Cheney of the state of Wyoming has received for Vice President of the United States 271 votes. Joe Lieberman of the state of Connecticut has received 266 votes. This announcement of the state of the vote by the President of the Senate shall be deemed a sufficient declaration of the persons elected President and Vice President of the United States, each for the term beginning on the 20th day of January 2001, and shall be entered, together with a list of the votes, on the journals of the Senate and the House of Representatives. May God bless our new President and our new Vice President, and may God bless the United States of America. Members of the Congress, the purpose for which the joint session of the two houses of Congress has been called, pursuant to Senate Concurrent Resolution Number 1, 107th Congress, having been accomplished, the Chair thanks the Speaker and the members of the House of Representatives and the Senate here assembled, and declares the joint session dissolved.
Members of the House and Senate met Saturday afternoon in a joint meeting to officially count and certify the Electoral College votes. A candidate needs at least 270 votes to be elected president. You're watching Road to the White House, C-SPAN's look at presidential politics and the transition process. While the counting was taking place in Washington, D.C., President-elect Bush was at his ranch in Crawford, Texas, meeting with 19 Republican governors.
I want to welcome you here to Prairie Chapel.